You look like a monster. My colleague Mia suffered severe facial injuries in a traffic accident. Our boss, Steve, threw harsh words at her. Steve's remark cut through her like a sharp knife, easily wounding a woman's heart. And it slashed through the last bit of Mia's composure. Mia was looking down, covering her face with her hands. Seeing Mia's tears, I felt a surge of heat throughout my body. I approached Mia and covered her with my suit jacket from head to toe. "It's all right. Leave it to me." "What?" Saying that, I made a call to someone. "My name is David. I turned 33 this year. Born into a family of doctors, I was raised in a relatively affluent household. As a child, I was shy and extremely introverted. Even when I was taken to the park, I would always hide behind my mother. My strict father wanted me, the eldest son, to become a doctor and provided me with various forms of advanced education. However, none of them sparked my interest, and I failed to achieve the desired results. On the other hand, my brother, 3 years younger than me, was a prodigy like our father and kept delivering impressive results. Soon, my father's expectations shifted to my brother, allowing me to lead a more liberated life. Yet, I couldn't find anything I was passionate about and began to lead a self-indulgent life. Seeing my brother diligently studying to become a doctor made me feel a vague sense of frustration. As my father's attention focused more on my brother, I became increasingly cynical. The only person who loved me as I was my mother. "You just need to do your best in your own way. Don't worry about it. There are many fun things ahead. No need to rush. Everything will work out." My mother was optimistic and always managed to laugh off my troubles with "it'll be all right." Strangely, whenever my mother said it's okay, I felt like things would indeed be okay. Thanks to her, I was able to lead a vibrant and lively life every day. After graduating high school, I attended a local university. I never felt dissatisfied about not being expected to excel, nor did I have a strong desire to strive for anything. The only thing that caught my interest during my university years was computer programming. Even as an adult, I preferred staying indoors, spending most of my time programming in my room. Seeing me so engrossed, my mother was very happy that I had found something I was passionate about. My mother fell ill during my second year of university. Treatment began immediately, but she started suffering from the side effects of the medication. She lost her hair and was in and out of the hospital. My mother, who was always so energetic, began to spend more time sitting silently on the sofa at home. She was someone who rarely showed weakness, but just before she passed away, I heard her express her vulnerability for the first time. Why me? I wanted to live longer." She repeated this like a delirium. She had become thin, her cheeks hollowed, and her complexion was poor. She looked so different from the mother I knew that I found myself wanting to look away. About a year into her battle with illness, my mother passed away and went to heaven. She spent her last days in tears, enduring a sad and painful time. The sight of my mother suffering left a deep trauma in me. Several years later, having overcome the loss of my mother, I joined an IT company as a system engineer and continue to work as usual. "Good morning." Still slouching, I see. "Come on, stand up straight and face forward." Yeah, good morning." The one who greeted me energetically this morning was my colleague, Mia. She has been a colleague since the beginning of my career, and we are the same age. I'm not good with women, and she was the only woman I could talk to easily. I still remember the day I first met her. "I'm Mia, assigned to this department starting today. Nice to meet you." "I'm David. Nice to meet you too." "David, nice to meet you. Just call me Mia." Yes. I was quite surprised by Mia's high communication skills. Mia is a rare female system engineer in this industry. Moreover, her skills are exceptional. It's rare for women to thrive in this industry. But she is skilled and more proactive than anyone else. And she is unbeatable, being both capable and beautiful. Although she can be a bit meddlesome, Mia's endless cheerfulness has always been a great help. Her attitude towards work is also very serious and sincere. I would never say it to her face, but she was someone I respected. "Hey, listen, I heard Steve is going to be assigned here. I did hear that someone from outside was coming, and it turns out to be Max's son." Mia said this, making a face of disgust. And for good reason. Our executive vice president Max's son, Steve, was notorious for bad rumors. He is 3 years younger than us, and after graduating from college, he had been with our company briefly. However, upon joining, Steve, wielding his father Max's power, caused nothing but trouble. The climax was a major fallout with the department head at the time, which even led to physical altercation. He then disappeared from the company, being sent to an overseas branch in a way that seemed like vanishing into thin air. He was always surrounded by bad rumors. No one would be happy to welcome him. With a heavy heart, we headed to the morning assembly. Then, Max, who rarely visits, came to our department with a young man in tow. Striding confidently behind Max was his son, Steve. "From now on, I will entrust my son with the head of this department. He is the talent that will carry the company's future. Learn as much as you can from him." At Max's words, we exchanged glances. Looking around at everyone in the department, their expressions were indescribable. After Max finished speaking, Steve introduced himself in front of us. "With me here, this company will grow even larger. Believe in me and do your best." This self-introduction turned out to be a huge blunder, plummeting Steve's reputation within the sales department. This man was either extremely confident in himself or shamelessly thick-faced. Regardless of the situation, he never lost his superior attitude. It was terrible when he insisted on accompanying me to a meeting. "Can't you handle something as simple as this on your own?" In the middle of our meeting, he interjected with a condescending attitude. This led to the client getting infuriated and the contract breaking down. My credibility, built over years with that client, crumbled in an instant. "What have you done?" That client was a valuable one who had been using our system for many years. Even when confronted, Steve was nonchalant, showing no sign of taking any responsibility. Just because they've been a long-term partner doesn't mean anything if they're not bringing in money. Profit is what matters. This is why I hate incompetence. Steve insisted he was right and shifted the blame, leaving me almost speechless. "Don't joke around. I've worked hard to gain that client's trust. It was your remark that wasted all our efforts. What, are you going to stand up to me? You know I can easily fire you, right?" I clenched my teeth hard. The frustration of not seeing my years of effort pay off was immeasurable. Having lost my mother, achieving results at work had become my sole purpose in life. This added to my frustration. I couldn't possibly work with such an irresponsible person. Despite being the boss, he had ruined a crucial client relationship, and I never wanted to deal with him again. But Steve's tyranny didn't stop there. Although unfamiliar with complex documents and administrative procedures, he wouldn't ask us for help due to his pride, even though he should have. When he delivered documents containing critical personal information of a client to the wrong company, it nearly led to a disaster. We apologized to the other party and managed to avert a crisis, but it could have easily threatened the company's existence. "It's your fault, my subordinates, for not being attentive enough. I just did what I was told." Even though the situation didn't escalate, it was an unforgivable mistake, yet Steve claimed he had no responsibility. It wasn't just me who was at the end of my patience. Mia felt the same way. That day, we ended up going out for drinks on short notice, venting our frustrations about Steve as if to clear the air. Mia seemed to share my feelings, troubled by Steve's daily work attitude. I've been thinking the same. I accompanied him to a meeting recently, and it was tough because he spoke down to the client and us. So it wasn't just us. It's unacceptable to inconvenience our clients like this. I felt relieved knowing Mia shared my sentiments. But there wasn't much we could do, so we just vented our frustrations that day and parted ways. The next day, Mia started to counter Steve with a firm attitude. If you claim to have no faults, then please complete at least one task without relying on us at all. We will not interfere with your work. Mia's statement was completely reasonable, and Steve couldn't counter it with his usual excuses. The department erupted in applause, leaving Steve completely isolated. Embarrassed in front of everyone, Steve seemed frustrated. Mia was right. We weren't here to clean up Steve's messes. Mia, who spoke on our behalf, was admirable. However, Steve, humiliated by the incident, harbored resentment towards Mia. You'll see someday. I'll make sure to pay back this debt someday. Mumbling complaints, he returned to his desk. Thanks to Mia's straightforward and clear words, Steve became subdued. This allowed us to carry out our daily tasks without issues. Other employees were grateful to Mia, and John, the manager who suffered the most, was so happy he cried. I, too, was relieved to see Steve quiet down. Just when I thought peace had returned, something happened. Mia, who had accompanied Steve on a sales visit that day, unfortunately got involved in an accident. It was a major accident involving several cars, and Mia was rushed to the hospital and admitted. Steve was unharmed and bragged about it the next day at work. I was fine. If Mia had driven better, we wouldn't have had the accident. They should be more competent before acting so high and mighty. I couldn't help but retort to Steve's spiteful comments. Isn't that an inappropriate thing to say? Weren't you concerned, being at the scene together? Please don't say anything that would sadden Mia when she returns. Though I counted Steve's bad-mouthing Mia, he just smirked creepily. Seeing his expression gave me a bad feeling. That's if she can come back from the hospital. Steve, making unsettling remarks, seemed to hint at knowing something. The meaning of his words became clear 2 months later. When Mia returned to work after being discharged, it was a terrible sight. Mia, it's a burn. It's not pleasant to look at, right? I'm sorry. Saying that, Mia looked down and went to her desk. Normally, she would greet me with a big smile and a pat on the back. I felt a bit of loneliness as Mia went to her desk without making eye contact with me, unlike her usual self. Mia, who had come to work, had half of her face still not healed and covered in bandages. This small visible part of her skin seemed severely damaged, far different from her previously clean and smooth complexion. Her teeth were also chipped, and her cheeks appeared sunken, possibly from not being able to eat properly. Mia had become almost unrecognizable, and I couldn't find the right words to say to her. I knew she had been badly injured, but I hadn't imagined it would be to the extent of damaging half of her face. Mia sat at her desk, covering her face with one hand. Sensing the mood, no one in the sales department tried to start a conversation. As a heavy silence fell, Steve's loud laughter echoed. What's with that face? You look like a monster. I can't believe you can walk around outside with a face like that. His words, sharp as a knife, easily wounded a woman's heart and tore through Mia's barely maintained composure. Mia, no doubt, heard Steve's words too. She looked down, covering her face with her hands. But I didn't miss the slight trembling of her shoulders. Tears, I presumed, began to fall from her hands covering her face. Having worked with her for nearly a decade, It was the first time I saw her cry. She was always the one who brightened up those around her with her smile. Seeing Mia's tears, I felt a surge of heat throughout my body. I approached Mia and covered her with my suit jacket from head to toe. "It's all right. Leave it to me." "What?" Saying that, I embraced her shoulder and led her into a meeting room. "Why did this happen? Why?" Mia, reaching her breaking point, began to cry uncontrollably. She looked at me, her face tear-stained and sweaty. At that moment, I was reminded of my late mother. My mother, too, had a terrible appearance before she passed away, crying over her fate. Back then, I didn't know what to do and could only stay by her side. I had had enough of losing the smiles of those I cared about. "Mia, trust me. I will definitely help you." I said that and offered my hand to Mia. Although hesitant, when Mia took my hand, I thought to myself that I couldn't let her suffer the same fate as my mother. I firmly gripped her hand back and assured her, "I'll take care of it. I want to see you smile again." As I said this, Mia looked surprised and her tears stopped. I patted her back gently, just as she had always encouraged me. "It's okay. I'm here for you. I might not be much, but I'm here." "No, I'm really grateful. Thank you." After reassuring Mia, I immediately went to another room and called a certain person. My brother, a renowned surgeon, is someone I deeply respect. It had been a while since I last called him, so I felt a bit tense. "Hi David, what's up? It's rare for you to call. Is something wrong?" I heard a familiar voice from the other end of the line. I was worried he might not answer because it was morning, but thankfully, he did. I explained Mia's injuries to my brother and asked if there was anything he could do. He agreed to introduce me to his most reliable contact. "I'd like to see it myself. Can you come here after work?" Relieved by my brother's words, I agreed. After work, I took Mia to my brother's clinic. Can it really be fixed? The doctor who treated my injuries said it would be difficult to restore my face to how it was before, and that famous doctors have long waiting lists. If it comes into my brother or father's hands, they can heal Mia's injuries. The famous doctor she mentioned must be either my father or brother. They are among the top surgeons. I've heard them talk about a patient who had suffered burns to their face before. Mia and I entered the clinic where my father and brother were. "It's been a while. You never show your face around here." My father greeted me. Then, my brother examined Mia's facial injuries in the consultation room. He nodded as he responded, "Yes, there's no abnormality in the bones and no muscle loss. Dad said it should be manageable. You'll need to be hospitalized for a while. Next, we'll proceed with the surgery." Hearing these words, Mia, who had been downcast, brightened up, looking revitalized. After deciding on the surgery, Mia showed me a smile in a taxi on the way back. "I've been so worried that I might have to live with this face for the rest of my life. But thanks to you, David, I feel like I can go back to how I was before, and that makes me really happy. Thank you." Seeing Mia's spirits lifted, I felt relieved. But in truth, it was all thanks to my father and brother. Once my face is back to normal, I'll get back at Steve. I'll never forgive him. Suddenly, Mia became angry. I thought her anger was because of Steve's taunting words that had deeply hurt her, but it seemed there was more to it. It wasn't just what he said that time. "I'm angry about Steve's drunk driving. I'm sure he had been drinking. His driving was erratic, and that's why I tried to take over." Mia, unable to contain her anger, started talking about what happened during the accident. Mia, who didn't trust Steve at the time, accompanied him on a sales visit. Steve was driving, with Mia as the navigator in the passenger seat. However, she noticed the smell of alcohol on Steve right after they set off. Mia offered to take over due to his reckless driving, but haughty Steve refused to give up the driver's seat, leading to the accident. I'm sure he was drunk. Sometimes, I even smell alcohol on him at work. Steve commutes by car to work. If that's true, it could be a serious issue. I decided to confront Steve about it immediately. The next day, I asked him again about the accident. Mia was supposed to have surgery but decided to take more time off work for illness. Steve seemed overly pleased by Mia's absence, appearing in high spirits from the morning. I was just a passenger in Mia's car. Her driving was so rough. We collided with a car that suddenly came into our lane. Well, considering her usual behavior, it's probably her fault. As I suspected, Steve was lying. According to Mia, Steve was the one driving. Yet, Steve insisted that Mia was driving, which felt off to me. I headed straight to a room in the company. It was the surveillance room. Usually unmanned, this room records footage from security cameras located throughout the office. After work, I went there, completed the necessary procedures, and started searching through the surveillance footage. I found irrefutable evidence. My actions from then on were swift. I moved in secrecy, visiting Mia in her hospital room without telling anyone. Mia was recovering well, and while she might not return entirely to her previous state, she looked much better. For the first time, I felt grateful to have such a capable brother. When everything was in place, I came up with a plan to trap Steve. The next day, as Steve was about to leave as usual, the moment he started the car, police officers emerged from the shadows, surrounding his car. Steve, surprised by the sudden appearance of the officers, seemed flustered. As the officers slowly surrounded the car, Steve rolled down the window to inquire about the situation. One of the officers responded, "I'm sorry to bother you, but it's Traffic Safety Week, and we're conducting alcohol checks just to be safe. Would you mind cooperating?" Hearing this, Steve's face instantly turned pale. Suddenly trembling, Steve couldn't give a clear response. Well, of course not. I don't drink during work hours." Steve's agitation was evident in his behavior. The officer pressed further. "We've had reports of employees drinking during work hours, which is why we're carrying out these surprise checks." "Well, I did have a few drinks last night, so it's possible there's still some alcohol in my system." "You had a drink. You know that if alcohol is detected, it constitutes drunk driving, right? We appreciate your cooperation." The suspicious officer kept questioning Steve, which led to a discovery when they followed him home. Steve had already been involved in a hit-and-run incident. Evidence at the scene, including tire marks, confirmed that Steve was the culprit. It was also revealed that Steve suffered from alcoholism. Steve was known to drink alcohol indiscriminately, regardless of time and place. He was even drinking inside the office, and various security cameras captured him consuming alcohol. Furthermore, I found footage from a security camera showing Steve drinking in the break room before heading out on sales on the day Mia had her accident. Mia's statement was the final blow. Steve had caused an accident while drunk. The truth was his selfish doing. But what was worse was how he handled the accident. It turned out that Steve was the one driving that day, with Mia sitting in the passenger seat. This was later clarified by a police investigation. Sensing something was wrong with how Steve was driving, Mia offered to drive instead, but he stubbornly refused. After the accident, only Mia was seriously injured. He had the first responders take Mia away and then falsely reported to the police that the accident was caused by Mia. Despite his abhorrent actions, he tried to pin the driving on Mia and elusively escape responsibility. Mia, who was unaware of this, was shocked to learn the truth. Preoccupied with her facial injuries, it seems she had never even thought about who was being blamed for the accident. All these were shameful attempts by a man trying to escape responsibility. As a result, Steve was arrested by the police. Given the evidence and the gravity of his actions, the officers said he couldn't avoid punishment. Following Steve's arrest, the company decided to discipline both him and Max. Due to his son's foolish actions, Max saw decades of his efforts go down the drain. Thus, Steve faced the full consequences of his actions. He now has to live with and confront his crimes. In adulthood, it's not status, power, or ability that matters. The crucial aspect is taking full responsibility for one's actions. I hope Steve reflects on his actions and reforms. Afterward, Mia's face almost completely returned to normal, and she was fully rejuvenated. I'm overjoyed to see her smile again. David, you're a lifesaver. Thank you. I owe you one. It's nothing. I just did what anyone would. Mia thanked me, but I felt awkward and couldn't fully express my joy. The credit for restoring her face goes to my father and brother. I merely contacted my brother. I hadn't done anything else. Moreover, since that incident, I've been in touch more frequently with my father and brother, and we've even planned to have dinner together. I should be the one thanking Mia. Without you, I might not have received help from your family. You were there for me when I was hurt and in tears, David. Mia blushed and looked into my eyes intently. Well, do you have time today? I'd like to express my gratitude, so I'd be happy if you could join me tonight. My heart raced as I saw Mia blush. Nervously nodding to the unprecedented formal invitation to dinner, I saw Mia's cheeks relax into a happy smile. Subsequently, Mia and I began dating and eventually decided to get married. On our wedding day, Mia, dressed in a wedding gown, looked stunningly beautiful. We concluded our reception surrounded by the blessings of our family, colleagues, and friends. Surely, my mother was watching over us from heaven. Some time later, Mia gave birth to a baby girl. I was so thrilled I felt like jumping for joy at the sight of our adorable child. After losing my mother, I had immersed myself in work, but now my focus shifts to protecting my new family. I intend to shower my daughter with the same abundance of love that my mother had given me. And in this one-time journey of life, there will undoubtedly be unfair and challenging moments. During such times, I remind myself, it will all work out. Remembering my mother's words, I continue to live each day with my beloved family. I'll freshen you up and make it all nice. When I happened to cross paths with a classmate, Kevin, at the year-end party, and he called out to me, I brushed him off and headed for my seat. Kevin then proceeded to pour his beer over my head from above. 3 of Kevin's cronies also started heckling me. I clenched my fists, barely containing my anger. So, I'll just cleanly cancel that $100 million contract then. What? Saying that, I left the restaurant. After that, I made a certain call. As a result, Kevin's world came crashing down. His own actions had led him down the path to ruin. My name is Robert Smith, 35 years old. I run an apparel company. After years of experience in the apparel industry, I founded my own company, at the age of 27. Until things took off, I lived a life of poverty, juggling day jobs and part-time work, but now my company has grown to a respectable size and recognition. Working in a field I'm passionate about brings me immense satisfaction, and I enjoy my work every day. My father, also an entrepreneur in a different field, often gives me advice when I face challenges at work. Life was fulfilling until one day, an unexpected piece of news reached me. This news would entangle me in an unforeseen event. Ever since middle school, it had been my dream to start my own apparel brand. Thus, I went to a high school with a fashion design program and majored in business management in college to learn about entrepreneurship. During high school, I worked part-time at a clothing store and never neglected my studies, no matter the circumstances. My desire to own my own brand was greatly influenced by my grandfather. Originally, my grandfather ran a bespoke suit company. I admired my grandfather, who worked energetically, and as I grew, I aspired to own a company like him. Although he worked actively until 80, he has passed the reins to his right-hand man due to his advanced age. When I discussed my dream with my grandfather and father in my third year of middle school, they were very supportive. Starting a company is fine, but you have to build it with your own efforts. Don't expect any help from us. We won't give you a single penny for it, but if you're willing to work hard, we'll support you. Both my grandfather and father had faced hardships in their youth to establish their businesses, so they encouraged me to persevere. They paid for my high school and college education as their parental duty, but true to their word, they didn't provide any financial assistance for my startup. Perhaps their tough love was what spurred me to work so hard. In high school, I juggled 2 part-time jobs at a clothing store and a convenience store, working tirelessly without any time for leisure. Kevin, a peer from middle and high school, often mocked me, saying, "Are you struggling with money? Poor you, maybe I should give you something." He also frequently pitied me for not being able to enjoy my youth. After graduating from university, I joined an apparel company to gain experience. There, I learned a great deal, and finally, at 27, I had saved enough money to start my own apparel brand. Initially, it was a small company of just 5 people, but over time, the team grew to 10, then 50, and now we have over 200 employees, with the company thriving under my leadership. Recently, our brand has gained recognition, attracting attention from various companies and experiencing a rapid rise in performance. Amid these fulfilling days, I received an invitation to a class reunion. It would be the first reunion in 17 years since our graduation. The date was still some time away, and it seemed manageable, so I marked my attendance and sent back the RSVP. 2 months later, the day of the reunion arrived. I was unusually excited from the morning, causing my colleagues to remark, "Mr. Smith, you seem even happier than usual today." I finished work on time and headed to the hotel, the venue for the reunion. Upon arrival, I found everyone already gathered, forming groups and enjoying a lively atmosphere. Lost in nostalgia, I felt a tap on my shoulder. Turning around, I saw an old friend from middle school. We spent some time reminiscing about the old days until I was approached again. When I looked towards the voice, I saw an unfamiliar man standing there. Wondering who he could be, he said, "Don't recognize me, it's Kevin. It's been since high school, right? You still have that poor look on your face." It was Kevin, who had always mocked me during middle and high school. He had changed so much that I hadn't recognized him. "Wow, long time no see. Kevin, you've changed a lot. Back in the day, Kevin used to dress rather modestly, but now he was decked out in high-end brands from head to toe, dripping in jewelry, looking like a nouveau riche." "Oh, it's nothing special. By the way, what kind of work are you guys doing?" When a classmate mentioned working at an auto repair shop, Kevin started mocking him with a sneer. "An auto repair shop? Sounds like you're making peanuts. Can you even live on that?" It seemed his habit of belittling people hadn't changed since middle school. After making fun of our classmate for a while, Kevin turned his attention to my job. "I work in apparel." It was just as I was about to speak. I was cut off mid-sentence when Kevin interrupted. "No way, apparel. Are you still working as part-timer? Not having a proper job at 35? That's terrible. You're done for." He laughed mockingly, clutching his stomach. Irritated by his mockery, I asked, "And what about you, Kevin? What do you do?" With a smug look, Kevin boasted, "I don't really need to work, but I'm an executive at Company Y." Company Y? Company Y is so well known that it's safe to say everyone has heard of it. I'm quite familiar with the company myself. Perhaps pleased by our surprise upon hearing the company's name, Kevin, without being asked, began to talk about himself. From what he shared, it seems Kevin married the daughter of the president of Company Y. He hasn't become a son-in-law, as his surname hasn't changed. After marrying his wife, he resigned from his previous job and became an executive at Company Y. It seems like a classic case of getting the job through connections. My wife is the vice president, and she covers all our living expenses, so I don't really need to work. I just do it to pass the time. No matter how much I spend, money just keeps flowing like water, Kevin bragged proudly. We had been putting up with his boasting, but eventually found it too annoying and decided to leave Kevin. Wait, I'm not done talking. Kevin tried to hold us back, so I replied dryly, enough already. How envious. This response seemed to upset him, as he suddenly turned red with anger and shouted, a lowlife who can only do part-time shouldn't mock me. Don't get cocky, you poor loser. Perhaps due to the alcohol, his rant became incoherent, and he left the venue shouting about how he couldn't talk with poor people. According to other classmates, Kevin had been boasting about his wife and company to everyone, and they all found him annoying. With Kevin gone, we were able to enjoy the reunion. A few weeks after the reunion, during the year-end party season, my company's parties were starting. Given the large number of employees, it was customary for each department to have its own party, and as the president, I had to attend all of them. Today was the sales department's turn, and I was scheduled to attend. However, I had an appointment with a client earlier in the day and planned to join the party afterward. I managed to finish the appointment just before 9 p.m. and hurried to the bar where the party was being held. As I was heading towards the reserved room at the back of the bar, "Hut, isn't that Robert?" "It is Robert. What are you doing here?" It was Kevin, who must have been sitting at a table, calling out to me. I couldn't believe we'd run into each other here. I greeted him casually, despite my surprise. Kevin then stood up, slung his arm around my shoulder, and said, "Why are you wearing a suit if you're just a part-timer? Let me introduce you guys. This is my classmate, but he's still just a part-timer. Crazy, right?" He began to mockingly introduce me to his drinking buddies, who seemed to be his cronies. They followed Kevin's lead and started mocking me as well. Annoyed, I knew better than to engage with drunkards. "Sorry, I'm in a hurry," I said, trying to leave Kevin's table. "You've always reeked of poverty." With a sneer, he said, "Let me freshen you up and clean you up," and then he poured the beer from his stein over my head. I was taken aback by the sudden turn of events, but the jeers from Kevin's cronies led to me being doused in beer not just once, but several times. As a result, I ended up completely soaked in beer. "Now you're rid of that poor smell. You should be thankful to me," Kevin said with a triumphant look. Even I had my limits, and this incident made me decide to seek revenge on Kevin. "So, I'll just cleanly cancel that $100 million deal then." "What?" I said to Kevin before turning back the way I had come and leaving the bar. I only informed the sales manager, apologizing that the appointment was running long and I couldn't make it to the year-end party, and then I immediately made a certain phone call. A few days after the beer dousing incident, I was summoned by someone and went to their company. At the reception, I gave the company name and was then led straight to the president's office. Upon entering, I was greeted by a man in his 60s and a woman in her 30s. "President Johnson, I apologize for the sudden trouble the other day." As I apologized, President Johnson said, "No, it is we who should be deeply sorry. Thank you for coming all this way today. This is my daughter, Emily." He introduced the woman to me. "Thank you for taking the time to come today. I deeply apologize for the other day. On behalf of the person involved, I offer my apologies. Emily is apologizing deeply to me." I found myself apologizing in turn, and for a while, the three of us were caught in a loop of apologies. After we had all apologized to each other, we got straight to the point. Regarding the incident the other day, we conducted an investigation immediately after you contacted us. We could hardly believe it. It's truly embarrassing. The two of them seemed so remorseful that I felt guilty by association. President Smith, in the course of our investigation, we discovered something. Is it all right for me to hear it? I asked, and President Johnson replied, we wanted you to hear it too, which is why we invited you here today. With that, President Johnson and Emily revealed a certain truth to me. As the three of us talked, there was a knock at the president's office door. Emily opened the door, and a familiar face appeared. It was Kevin and his trio of cronies who had arrived. Not only Kevin, but his cronies too were visibly shocked to see me there. Why are you here? As Kevin said this, Emily replied in a cool tone. He's the president of one of our business partners, so it's not strange for him to be here. It's pathetic that you don't even know the face of a business partner's president. But who would have thought that President Smith and you were classmates? At this, Kevin and his cronies turned pale and could only utter, I thought you were incompetent, but this is just pitiful. President Johnson began to hold his head in his hands. I mentioned it the other day, didn't I, about settling a $100 million deal. I came here today to wipe the slate clean. As I said this, Kevin replied, you said something like that the other day, but you're just a part-time worker at a clothing store, aren't you? Interrupting him, President Johnson slammed his desk and stood up. You really know nothing at all. President Smith is the head of the rapidly growing R. You must have heard of it, haven't you? Or, as in, the apparel company that accounts for most of our products. Kevin, now pale, managed to say that, and Emily sharply retorted, yes, exactly. Without ours business, our company would surely face bankruptcy. And what have you done to the president of that company? Emily glared at Kevin and his cronies with piercing eyes. The four of them froze, as if paralyzed by a snake's gaze. Everything you did to President Smith has been relayed to us, so don't think you can talk your way out of this. In fact, the company I was at was Company Y. Emily, who had been assisting President Johnson, was the vice president of Company Y and Kevin's wife. My company had been doing business with Company Y for about 2 years, and our products made up 70% of their merchandise. When I heard Company Y at the reunion and that Kevin had married the vice president, I didn't believe he would take me seriously if I said I was a president, so I didn't mention it. But after the beer incident, my patience ran out, and I called President Johnson of Company Y to say, I just had beer poured over my head by your employee Kevin. I cannot do business with a company that employs such people, and I explained what happened at the bar. Initially skeptical, President Johnson, fearing the loss of the contract, promised to investigate immediately and hung up. And then, a few days later, President Johnson called to apologize after conducting an investigation. It turns out that on that day, it was actually Kevin's year-end party, and there were several other employees present besides Kevin and his cronies. President Johnson immediately conducted interviews with the party members, and it was revealed that several employees had witnessed me being doused in beer. This led to my being summoned to the company today for an apology based on the findings of the investigation. Upon hearing this, Kevin and his cronies began to tremble, perhaps finally realizing the gravity of their situation. Your actions could have destroyed this company. What were you thinking? This company has been in my family since my grandfather's time, and now it's at risk because of your foolish behavior. Emily yelled at Kevin and his group. I didn't know. If I had known that Robert was President Smith, our business partner. Kevin attempted to excuse himself. Whether you knew or not, pouring beer on someone is inexcusable. To think we have such an unreasonable person in our family is embarrassing. President Johnson interjected with a flushed face, causing Kevin to immediately fall silent. And it's not just this incident, is it? You've been doing whatever you please, thinking I wouldn't find out. Enough is enough. Emily then placed a bundle of items on the desk. revealing further truths to Kevin. What Emily slammed down was a stack of receipts, numbering in the dozens. "Why do you have these?" Kevin's face went from pale to ashen. "Personal dining, luxury items. You've been claiming them as business expenses. You lied to accounting, saying you had my approval. When did I supposedly give you permission?" When Emily asked him, Kevin seemed unable to find a response, his eyes darting around. Before Kevin and his group arrived, I had heard from Emily and President Johnson that Kevin had lied to the accounting department, claiming personal dining and luxury items as business expenses for entertainment and gifts. During the investigation into the beer pouring incident, someone from the accounting department consulted Emily about the expenses, leading to the discovery of this fact. Subsequently, President Johnson and Emily reviewed all the receipts for expenses Kevin had claimed, uncovering a significant amount of embezzlement. The fact that President Johnson and Emily wanted to share with me was about Kevin's embezzlement. Despite being an executive with a presumably decent salary, Kevin had been dipping into company funds. However, seeing him adorned in such luxury brands, it somehow made sense. "What you've done is embezzlement, a serious crime. Because of the deal-breaking incident and your embezzlement, you will have to leave the company. We'll also be divorcing, so prepare yourself," Emily declared, causing Kevin to panic and beg her. "Please, not that. I'll return the embezzled money and work harder. Just reconsider the divorce," Kevin pleaded. However, Emily was unyielding, forcefully pushing Kevin away. "Don't touch me. Leave now. I never want to see your face again." After Emily spoke, she turned away from Kevin. Seeing Emily was not swayed, Kevin then turned to me in desperation. "Please, I'm begging you. Convince Emily for me. If you can just reset the business deal, everything will work out. Let's forget about the beer incident and act like adults here. My divorce might be your fault, you know." Kevin, still not understanding what he did wrong, demanded from a position of superiority that I accept a business deal. I was so astonished by his audacity that I was at a loss for words. I shook my head and said, "You really don't understand anything, do you? This isn't about that anymore. I can fulfill your request. If you're going to blame anyone, blame your own actions." Looking Kevin in the eyes as I said this, he collapsed in tears on the spot. He is possibly thinking crying might solve his problems. He kept glancing over at me, perhaps hoping for some sympathy. It's sad to see a person fall this low, beyond any hope of redemption. As I was contemplating what to do next, President Johnson said, "President Smith, I apologize for taking up your time today. We'll handle the rest. So please feel free to go." Following President Johnson's words, I left Company Y in their hands. As the door to the President's office closed behind me, I could hear President Johnson's angry voice, which gave me a sense of relief, and I returned to my company feeling refreshed. Later, I had the chance to hear about Kevin from Emily. Kevin and Emily ended up divorcing, and Kevin left Company Y. He repaid the embezzled money in full by taking out loans, so the police were not notified. Kevin, who had relied on Emily for everything including rent and living expenses, was kicked out of the house after the divorce. As a result, without a home or job, he found a live-in part-time job, but with debt repayments, he was left with almost no money. He occasionally contacted Emily, complaining about his poor lifestyle. Kevin, who used to look down on me for being poor, has now found himself in that very position. While I don't take pleasure in his misfortune, I can help but feel that what goes around comes around. Kevin's cronies also faced their own penalties and left the company, likely due to the uncomfortable atmosphere. It seems karma has caught up with each of them. As for me, I renegotiated and signed a new contract with Company Y. President Johnson and Emily have thanked me multiple times, but the business with Company Y is also beneficial for me. I hope to maintain a good relationship with Company Y moving forward. Somehow, through this incident, I've become friends with Emily. We've started going out for drinks, and she's become somewhat of a big sister figure to me. Lately, she's been concerned about me being of marriageable age but without a partner, and has offered to introduce me to someone soon. While it's a bit nosy, I've been so focused on work that I've nearly forgotten what dating is like. I'm a bit anxious, but also excited about the prospect of meeting someone new. Looking forward to a passable new encounter, I'm motivated to continue working hard today. Do you really think someone like you belongs here? You're completely out of place. It seems you don't understand where you stand. This hotel is only for the elite like us. A middle school dropout like you doesn't fit in. Go home. Despite the mean things my classmate Mike said to me, I didn't care. It's because Mike didn't know the truth. I'm called James and I'm in my 30s. I'm about to tell you about things that happened in the past. My family was very poor, so ever since I started elementary school, I was ridiculed by those around me. It was because my clothes were obviously hand-me-downs and worn out. So, everyone laughed and called me a poor person. By the time you're in elementary school, you start to distinguish which families are wealthy and which are poor. Families who can afford to buy the latest games and bicycles for their kids are considered rich, while those who have nothing are seen as poor. I was an only child, but we were a single-parent family, and my mother was struggling to keep our living, so I hardly had any toys. My parents divorced before I was fully aware, and it seems my mother never received any child support. According to my mother, my father was unfaithful and cheated a lot, and despite her repeated warnings, he never changed. Fed up, my mother decided to leave home with me. My father was a terrible person who probably didn't care about us at all. I've never met him since the divorce and didn't want to. I didn't care about a father who made my mother suffer, especially since it was unlikely he would ever apologize. So, my mother worked multiple jobs for my sake, but had to reduce her workload when she fell. I was a growing boy, and with my mother's low income, we couldn't afford luxuries. While other families had cakes for birthdays and Christmas, we never had such things at our home. Believing in Santa, I hung my stocking and made a wish, but woke up to find it empty, realizing that Santa doesn't visit poor kids' homes. Later, understanding that Santa was actually the parents, I felt the harsh reality of our situation. Among the boys who teased me, I particularly despised a boy named Mike. Mike came from a wealthy family and always bragged about his possessions. For instance, the latest gaming console his father bought him, or the expensive clothes his mother got for him. Mike was probably the only one who came to school in branded clothes, so both the girls and boys would all say, "Wow, that's amazing," and praise him. The other day, I went to the department store with my mom and got this shirt and pants. Cool, right? They cost $500 in total. Well, my family is rich, so it's expected. There he goes again. Hey, James, your clothes are so lame. Where did you buy them? From a supermarket, perhaps? Well, yes, but so what? Give me a break. Who buys clothes at a supermarket? That's for groceries. Well, my mom only shops at high-end stores. But I guess your family can only afford Walmart, right? What's wrong with Walmart? They have tasty snacks. I would never eat cheap supermarket snacks. I only eat the high-end snacks my mom chooses. Don't compare your family to mine. Mike's family was indeed wealthy, and I remember being shocked by their gigantic house when I saw it once. Mike's father was a business owner and seemed to be doing quite well financially. That's probably why he could afford to buy anything his family desired without causing them any hardship. Yet, seeing Mike belittling others, I couldn't help but think his education was a failure. Mike seemed to enjoy looking down on me, criticizing everything I had. The clothes and shoes my mother bought for me, even my school bag, he ridiculed them all. which made me incredibly angry. One time, Mike aggressively scratched my backpack. Angry that he had damaged the backpack my mother had worked hard to buy for me, I confronted him. "What did you do? Look, it's scratched. My mom bought this for me." But isn't that obviously cheap? Who cares about something like that? My stuff is high-end. This is the most expensive thing from the department store." That's not the point. Do you think it's okay to damage other people's belongings? That's the worst. You should pay for this. What? How dare you talk to me like that? Acting all high and mighty for a poor kid. So what? It's not you who's great. It's your dad who's the CEO. There's nothing great about being the kid, Mike. Don't get ahead of yourself. I've always been pretty assertive, so I wasn't just going to take the bullying for nothing. But maybe that got under his skin, because Mike flew into a rage and started hurling insults at me. He also resorted to throwing sand from the playground at me as a form of harassment. Things escalated, and I began to dread dealing with someone like Mike. It felt like a waste of time to engage with someone like him, and I was planning to ignore him from then on. However, he seemed to be fixated on me, constantly provoking me whenever he could. I couldn't stand it. "Hee, I stole your pencil case." "Hey, give it back. What are you doing?" "Wow, all the pencils inside are so short. Can't afford new ones." That's sad. Poor people can't even buy pencils." I'm glad I'm rich. Anything I want, my mom and dad buy for me." "Hey, give it back already." As Mike and I scuffled, we got caught on a desk and fell over. The desk crashed down and hit Mike's arm, causing him to hold it in pain. I realized I was in trouble, but everyone was whispering and looking at me. They must have thought I injured him on purpose. But it was not intentional. I was just trying to stop Mike's foolishness. However, in our elementary school class, everyone disliked me because I was poor, and they told our teacher, Mr. Thompson, that I did it on purpose. So, I was reprimanded by Mr. Thompson without a chance to defend myself. My mother was called to the school, and I felt terrible. She apologized repeatedly and looked like she was about to cry. I never wanted to put her through this. We even went to apologize to Mike's family, but they were furious. It was just a minor bruise, nothing serious. But it all started because Mike stole my pencil case and teased me. For the first time, I realized how unfair the world could be. It was frustrating to see everyone siding with Mike, the rich kid. I always wondered why I had to go through this just because I was poor. I wasn't causing trouble for anyone by being poor. I was trying my best to live every day. Having to make my mother apologize was a huge shock to me, but Mike seemed unfazed. In fact, he was spreading rumors that I deliberately knocked over the desk to hurt him. Then, we entered middle school and ended up in the same class again. Mike had apparently tried for private middle schools but didn't get in anywhere, so he ended up at the local public middle school. He wasn't that bright, just wealthy, which I kind of expected. But Mike was making excuses like I was just 1 point away from passing, which seemed rather pathetic. Even after we started middle school, Mike continued to tease me and, along with other boys, mocked my lunch. They called the lunch my mom made for me poor looking. What's this? That sandwich has no ham in it. How can you eat this? Isn't this worse than animal feed? Hey, just give it back. No way. If you say please return it, Lord Mike, I might consider it. Who would say that? Hey, you think a poor kid like you can talk back to me? Do you know who I am? The son of the CEO of Adams Corporation. So what? You're always bragging about your parents, but you yourself aren't impressive at all. You ended up here because you failed to get into a boys' school. Say that again, I dare you. I'll say it as many times as you want. Despite being a rich kid, you couldn't get into middle school because you're not smart. All right, tough luck. This is what happens to someone who can't apologize. Mike dumped my lunch on the floor and burst out laughing. I was so shocked that I froze and couldn't do anything. I admit I might have gone too far, but Mike was the one who started it. I wondered if this wouldn't have happened if I had been more submissive. But I didn't want to just take it one-sidedly, and I've always been pretty assertive, so I couldn't help but talk back. Then, in our third year of middle school, everyone started to seriously consider their future paths. Mike was told by our homeroom teacher, Mr. Carter, that he had no chance at prestigious private high schools, so he lowered his sights to a certain private school. I couldn't even dream of attending a private high school, and I was even debating whether to go to a public one. My mother had become more frail than before, and I knew she was pushing herself to work. Her complexion was always poor, pale as clay, making me fear she might pass away someday. I felt guilty making her work so hard for me, so I thought it would be better to start working right after middle school. But Mr. Carter was a bit surprised when he heard I wanted to work instead of going to high school, considering my decent grades. I've decided not to go to high school but to work instead. I really want to start earning as soon as possible to ease my mother's burden. Well, I can understand that, but James, your grades are decent, and you could do well in high school. Are you sure that's not an option? Yes, that's an academic school, and I don't think they focus much on job placement. You know, vocational schools are said to be better for getting jobs, but academic schools focus on preparing students for university. I don't even have time to get qualifications at a vocational school. I want to start working right away to bring money home, so I really prefer to find a job. I see, it might be a tough path, but if that's what you want, James, I'll support you. Thank you, I'll do my best. And so, I graduated. Everyone seemed happy with their high school placements, but I was the only one in my grade who went straight to work. Mike smirked when he found out I would be working right after middle school and started taunting me again. So, you're working right after middle school, huh? Well, do your best. People at the bottom have no choice but to get by somehow. So what? Good for you for getting into high school. I thought you wouldn't make it anywhere. What did you say, you infuriating jerk? Just you wait. A middle school dropout like you will get tired and thrown out soon enough. Well, cling to your job as long as you can. I was planning to do that without you telling me. See ya. I started working as a full-time employee at a certain inn in April. It was a live-in job where I handled guest services. The landlady was strict but treated me like her own son. I heard that the landlady had lost her son to an illness before. Apparently, her son was about my age when he passed away, which is why I think she dotes on me so much. James, thank you for your polite service. A guest earlier was praising you, saying you're friendly, energetic, and cheerful. I'm grateful to hear that. I'm still getting used to a lot of things, but it's very encouraging to be complimented by guests. I'll keep doing my best. It's about time for your break. Oh, and there's some chocolate cake you like in the break room. Really? Is that okay? Yes, it's a little thank you for always working hard. The landlady sometimes bought me cake, probably using her own money. Having hardly ever eaten cake when living with my mom, it was incredibly touching. My salary wasn't much, given I was a middle school graduate, but living on site meant most of my basic needs were covered, so it was sufficient. This allowed me to send money to my mother. I didn't have much else to spend on, so I sent my salary to my mom, hoping she could enjoy some nice food. James, a banquet is starting soon, and it'll get busy, but please take care of the guests over there. Jess, understood. Mr. Smith, right. Yes, Mr. Smith, and please take care of Mrs. Miller as well. Understood. I'll be on my way. The landlady was always efficient and impressive to watch. I wanted to become competent like her, but there was still so much I wasn't used to. Fortunately, I had plenty of support around me, so I managed to keep up with my work. Though I was sometimes strictly reprimanded, I knew it was for my own good. That's why I was able to endure and strive to grow. One time, I went back to my hometown. It was when I turned 30. The family home was actually a small, run-down apartment. My mom had reduced her part-time shifts, and she looked a bit healthier. There were several envelopes on the dining table, and one of them turned out to be a notice for reunion. It was a middle school reunion scheduled at a fancy hotel, but I somehow didn't feel like going. However, the sender was Mr. Carter, so I thought maybe I should attend. Mr. Carter was always on my side, always looking out for me. He supported me when I said I wanted to work after middle school, and even after I started working, he would check in on me now and then. A teacher organizing the reunion is rare, but I do want to see him. It's been a long time. I wonder how Mr. Carter is doing now. When I was 15, Mr. Carter was about 30, still quite young. He was my age back then, but probably more put together. That's what I find myself thinking. Now that I'm 30, Mr. Carter would be 45. He's at an age where one might call him an old guy, but Mr. Carter had a youthful face even at 30, so I imagine he still looks young. Wanting to see Mr. Carter, I marked "will attend" on the reply slip and sent it back. On the day of the reunion, I headed to the fancy hotel with nervous anticipation. I wondered how everyone had grown up. Walking inside, I made my way to the banquet hall, the venue for the reunion. I could hear the bustling voices of everyone and thought, not much has changed since middle school. Both the guys and girls were chatting happily, a nostalgic scene. My middle school days weren't great, but I was somewhat happy to see everyone. Above all, I wanted to meet Mr. Carter and thank him for his support. I took my seat according to the seating chart. Then, a guy approached me. I recognized him immediately as Mike. He was the only one with such a mean look on his face. "Hey, long time no see. You're James, right? How's life as a middle school grad?" It's okay, I guess." "Really? Just okay? Well, I guess you live in extreme poverty every day. You were always poor after all. I'm set to take over my dad's business. They even call me the heir at the company. I'm the future president after all." "Oh, is that so?" It seemed Mike had joined his father's company and was being groomed as the successor. The thought of him coming over just to boast about this made me feel weary. I'd rather look for Mr. Carter and express my gratitude than listen to Mike's pointless bragging. Glancing around, I spotted a slightly gray-haired man. That must be Mr. Carter. He hadn't changed much in height or build, and I could recognize him from the back. I got up and approached Mr. Carter. "Mr. Carter, it's been a long time. I'm James." "Oh, James, how have you been?" "Keeping well." "Yes, thanks to you. I'm busy every day, but it's fulfilling." "That's good to hear. I always worried you might be overworking yourself since you're such a hard worker, but if you're healthy, that's great." "Yes, I'm doing well." At that moment, Mike approached again, smirking. He was probably about to say something mean again. "Why don't you just leave? You're annoying." "What? Why all of a sudden? Do you really think someone like you belongs here? You're completely out of place. It seems you don't know your own standing." "Ha ha ha. This hotel is only for the chosen ones like us. A middle school dropout like you doesn't fit in. Go home." "I don't understand what you're saying. If I'm such an eyesore, why don't you leave? You little, who do you think you're talking to? I'm the son of a president. There's no comparison between me and a middle school dropout. Just disappear. Can't you see you're out of place?" That's when Mr. Carter spoke up. "What are you talking about? This hotel. James is the manager here." "What, really? You might not know this, but James has been recognized for his work and became the manager of this hotel. So he's far from being out of place here." "That's impossible. He's just a useless middle school dropout, incapable of succeeding anywhere." There's no way a middle school dropout could become a hotel manager. I've never heard of such a thing. Whether you've heard of it or not, it's a fact. I started off doing menial tasks at an inn, but my hard work there was recognized. And now I'm in this position. This Grand Palace Resort was actually established by the inn I used to work for. What are you talking about? Initially, we were only managing the inn, but then we decided to create something more upscale, like 5-star urban luxury hotels and resorts. That's how I ended up being appointed as the manager of this Grand Palace Resort. They saw my hospitality skills and manners developed at the inn and asked me to take on this role. Mike was utterly astonished, his eyes wide with disbelief. Actually, I am the manager of this Grand Palace Resort, a luxury hotel. It's a 5-star hotel, and it was created by the parent company of the inn where I first worked. Until now, we had only managed inns, but we decided to move into providing high-class urban accommodations and started constructing 5-star hotels. When looking for the right talent, I was chosen. I was surprised to be selected, but I was happy that my efforts were recognized. I thought I would always be stuck in low-level jobs, but the landlady had been watching me closely. "You're too good to be just doing odd jobs here forever. You should go to the Grand Palace Resort next. It will be lonely without you. But it's for your own good, James. Thank you for all your hard work. Keep your spirits up when you're there. I'm grateful to have worked here. I've seen many guests happy, and I've always been treated well by you and everyone else. I believe I've been able to do my best thanks to everyone here, so I'll keep doing my best in the next chapter too. Remember, you can always reach out if things get tough. Remember that everyone here is rooting for you. Just think of that and get back on track. Your mother would be proud to see how much you've grown." Yes, my mother was overjoyed when I became the manager. I couldn't have reached this point on my own. I don't even know how to begin thanking everyone, but thinking about not seeing everyone again makes me sad. Hey, no crying now. This is a celebration. Cheer up, or you make me cry too. Right? It's a good thing. I'll keep going with a positive attitude. Thanks to the landlady's recommendation, I made an unusual career move. It was unprecedented for a middle school graduate to become a manager of a luxury hotel, but I was highly valued for my contributions. I've always been blessed with supportive people. During my time at the inn, the landlady and the staff cared for me, and I received numerous letters from Mr. Carter. Knowing so many people truly cared about me made my past as a middle school dropout seem insignificant. Mike apparently went to a decent university, but his character was deeply flawed. People who look down on others and take pleasure in belittling them are unlikely to earn respect from anyone. When Mr. Carter stood up for me, Mike was so angry he trembled. I don't know why Mike was so mad, but I felt more justified in being angry after being belittled by him. Perhaps he was looking forward to seeing me cry and run away, so finding out I was the manager must have been a blow to his ego. He must have been frustrated to see someone he looked down on succeed. Mike, in frustration, started bothering others and bad-mouthing me. However, our matured classmates did not appreciate Mike's behavior and warned him. Annoyed by their disapproval, Mike got defensive and loud. Eventually, after being told he was being a nuisance, he sheepishly left. He's still acting like a child. Well, if he can acknowledge James's efforts, it's no surprise people think he hasn't grown up. Right? I wouldn't want to be like him. I was mocked in middle school, but I never thought he'd still be so malicious. Anyway, it's good to see you're doing well, James. Although we've been exchanging letters, it's reassuring to see you in person. You tend to overdo things, so I've been worried. How's the hotel job going? Thanks to you, it's going smoothly. There are tough times, but I enjoy the work more than anything. That's good to hear. Remember, if things get hard, you can always talk to me. You're not a middle schooler anymore. But you're still an important former student to me, so don't hesitate to reach out. Then, I met a woman. She was visiting with a friend and was earnestly searching for a lost item. No staff member could find it, but I stumbled upon it by chance. When I returned the lost item to her, she was delighted. Her name was Emily, and she was beautiful. The handkerchief she lost, given by her mother, was very precious to her. Her mother had passed away, but she had given Emily the handkerchief just before her death. "Thank you so much for finding it. This was the last thing my mother gave me, so it's very precious. It might look like a dirty old handkerchief, but it's a cherished keepsake to me." "Not at all. I'm honored to have been of help. I'm glad you found your precious item." And somehow, Emily and I started dating. She pursued me earnestly, and eventually, I gave in. I wondered if it was okay to develop this kind of relationship with a guest, but since we coincidentally met on my day off, it must be fate. Emily wanted to express her gratitude to me and invited me out for a meal. She still seemed pleased about that handkerchief, giving me the impression that she's a very sincere person. "I'm really glad to be dating you. After all, it's rare to find someone as dedicated to their work as you are. You're such a hard worker. And I aspire to be like that too." "Is that so? But there's something important I need to tell you. I'm sorry for keeping it quiet, but the truth is, I never made it to high school." "Aren't you worried about having a future with someone like me? You only went to middle school." "Yes." When Emily momentarily looked frozen, I thought she must have been put off. After all, lacking an education could be a significant drawback when considering marriage in the future. But that wasn't the case with Emily. "Wow, but I hope this doesn't sound rude. Becoming a manager despite not even going to high school is quite impressive. You must have worked very hard. You really do give your all in everything, don't you? Really. You're not put off. I mean, when you think about the future, some might prefer a college-educated elite, right? I once dated a college graduate who was set to become the next CEO of a certain company, but he was incredibly self-centered. He seemed to enjoy looking down on others, and I was fed up with it. I prefer someone who is currently striving hard over someone like that. Educational background varies from person to person, and it shouldn't dictate how one lives their life." "Is that so? I'm glad to hear that." I couldn't help but wonder if Emily's ex-boyfriend might have been Mike. I didn't want to pry too deeply or remind her of unpleasant memories, so I remained silent. Emily seemed to trust and think highly of me. I may not be as accomplished as she believes, but I am determined to become a man worthy of her expectations. A year later, we get married. Emily's parents approved of me, which was incredibly gratifying. I was concerned they might be unhappy about their daughter marrying a man without even a high school diploma, but they said, "Education is just one of many measures and doesn't define a person." My mother also took a great liking to Emily, treating her as if she were her own daughter. Emily's cheerful and friendly nature must make her well liked by everyone. We even invited Mr. Carter to our wedding. Mr. Carter cried as if it were his own child getting married. "I'm so glad you found such a wonderful wife. Nothing makes me happier than seeing you happy." "Mr. Carter, you are crying too much." "Well, I'm happy to be married to Emily too. I'm looking forward to building a good family life." "If you ever make your wife cry, I won't let it go. Just work hard every day and live happily as a couple." "Yes, I will do just that." And so, our new life together began. Both Emily and I are working, and as the manager, my days are busy, but we help each other out with household chores. I don't want to burden Emily alone, and am willing to do anything I can. Having been raised in a single-parent household, I'm fairly capable around the house, and during my live-in work at the inn. I even did my own ironing. I'm grateful that the hardships I've faced have turned out to be valuable experiences. Despite the busyness, my life is fulfilling. This is a testament to my efforts and thanks to my wife, Emily. We will continue to join forces and overcome anything that comes our way. On the day of the company's anniversary party, I wore my usual suit, and my wife, Linda, donned a dress she had chosen especially for the occasion, and we headed to the venue. Upon arriving at the hotel where the party was being held, we checked in at the reception. Linda was thrilled by the flowers and beautiful decorations adorning the venue. I was hoping for a peaceful time as she seemed to be looking forward to the meal, but my wish was shattered by my boss, Jason. "Hey, you were here." Upon spotting me, Jason hurried over, glancing at Linda beside me, said, "Is that your parent next to you? Don't bring your mother along." Overwhelmed with anger, I took Linda's hand and said, "Let's go," then started walking towards the exit. Soon, I could hear the sound of hurried footsteps behind us. Turning around, I saw the president of our company, Mr. Thompson, running towards us with a pale face. There was also a man in his 60s, standing beside him. Seeing Mr. Thompson's face, I stopped, intending to say something to him before leaving the venue. But before I could say anything, the man next to Mr. Thompson began to speak. "Linda, is that you? My name is Tom. I'm in my 30s and currently handle system development at the company. I enjoy my work, and although we don't have children, Linda and I live a fulfilling life together. I met Linda about 5 years ago. In fact, I joined the current company just a few years ago, having previously worked as a teacher at an international school in Cambodia. That's where I met Linda. She was working for an organization that supports developing countries and had been dispatched to Cambodia. It felt like a fateful encounter. Until then, I had never been in a relationship, and I was convinced I would live a life far from marriage. That's precisely why I decided to take a job abroad, where I met Linda and found myself falling for her. I was instantly drawn to her as she interacted with the locals, laughed freely with the children, and showed genuine kindness. It seemed like Linda was somewhat aware of me too, and naturally, we started to have meals together. Having never dated a woman before, it felt almost surreal how smoothly our relationship began. Linda, being over a decade older than me, was initially concerned about our age difference, but it didn't matter to me. Instead, I was attracted to her tolerance and innate goodness, something I didn't find in women my age or younger. Every time I expressed this to Linda, she would smile at me, delighted. Having met such a wonderful woman, my boss, Jason, always ridiculed our relationship. He often mocked the age gap between my wife and me, using Linda as a joke to amuse others. Jason's mockery began about 3 years ago, not long after we met. That day was my welcome party, and despite being a mid-career hire, most of the employees had gathered for me. Being a young and small startup, there weren't many employees. Yet, I felt at ease with the company's homely atmosphere, believing I could fit in quickly. My comfort began to wane when Jason, who initially seemed pleasant, gradually became drunk and his behavior started to feel off. "Tom, you said you were married, right? Show me a picture of your wife." "Of course, but please don't expect a beauty like your wife, who everyone looks up to." Jason had been bragging repeatedly about how young and beautiful his wife was to his subordinates. "Rather than hanging out with these guys, I'd rather head home early to see my wife," he slurred, boasting about her, so I chimed in to sing his praises too. Jason was enjoying our conversation, but when I showed him a photo of Linda, he burst out laughing, spitting everywhere. "Is this your wife? More like your mom than your wife. Do you call her mom when you get home?" Jason said that, then started passing the photo to his subordinates, laughing and saying, "Check this out. This is Tom's mom." Colleagues glanced my way, reluctantly joining in Jason's jests to stay in his good graces. Though feeling bad for me, they couldn't outright dismiss Jason, our superior. Frustrated with Jason, I felt guilty for putting my colleagues in this awkward position. But appearances don't define a person. I'm sure you'll understand once you meet her," I said, trying to keep calm, but Jason only provoked me further. "What are you talking about? I wouldn't want to meet her even if you paid me. I might age just by association." Saying that, Jason started fiddling with his phone and then showed us a picture of his wife on the screen. At that, exclamations of admiration escaped from the employees. To me, it looked unmistakably like the kind of brown-nosing the employees always seem to be doing. Jason probably often boasts about his wife to his subordinates, and his constant nature must be exasperating for the employees. Although they respond positively to Jason's stories, their faces seem to betray a sense of annoyance as they nod along. Women have to be young and beautiful, right? Look at Tom. He's only been here a few days but stays late all the time. If his wife were more appealing, he'd probably rush home. Saying that, Jason burst into laughter and finished his glass of beer. A coworker nearby refilled his empty glass, and Jason nodded in satisfaction, holding the glass in his hand. "I'm in management, so I can't leave early, but I'd swap places with you. Who doesn't want to go home? Learn fast and climb a ladder, will you?" After spitting out those words with slurred speech, Jason emptied his glass and stood up to head to the restroom. Sympathetic glances from colleagues felt like salt in the wound. From that day on, every time Jason saw me, he'd start by poking fun at Linda. "Good morning. You're early for work again today. Seems like you'd rather not be at home, but please, let's skip the excessive overtime." After saying that, he'd erupt into laughter and make his way to his desk. Though I enjoyed my work, Jason's comments dampened my spirits. While I was organizing some items, Jason called me over. When I went to him, he said, "From now on, make me a coffee when you arrive at work," assigning me a task unrelated to my job. I thought to myself that this was surely not right and considered objecting. But then I remembered a junior employee used to make coffee for Jason every morning. It must not have been out of initiative, but rather, as now, out of being ordered to do so. The thought of Jason getting displeased if I refused, and then asking another junior employee to do the same task, made it hard for me to say no. I let out a small sigh and responded in a quiet voice, "Yes." I headed straight to the kitchenette to brew some coffee and then took it to Jason. On my way there, I realized I should have checked with the employee who usually made Jason's coffee whether he liked sugar or milk in it, but I decided to be more careful about that in the future and continued on my way. "Sorry to keep you waiting. Is black okay? I should have asked about your preference before brewing it. My apologies for the oversight." After I said that and handed over the coffee, Jason spent some time looking at the coffee in the cup. I briefly worried if something was not to his liking, but was soon reassured when Jason cracked a smile. However, what Jason said next was almost unbelievable. "This coffee doesn't smell appetizing. Mind throwing it away?" Saying that, Jason handed me the cup directly. Thinking it must surely be a joke, I gave a polite smile, but Jason, as if urging me to take it quickly, thrust the cup towards me. Realizing he was serious, I couldn't hold back and confronted him. "Don't you think that's a bit rude? At the very least, please prepare your own drink. And please, don't give me orders that are unrelated to work ever again." When I showed my anger, Jason tried to calm me down with a sheepish grin. "Don't get so worked up. Besides, it's not like I was giving you an order. You were just doing me a favor, right? Well, from now on, I probably won't be able to drink the coffee you make, so I'll ask someone else without being told." If I stay any closer to Jason, I might end up yelling in anger. To control myself, I refrained from saying anything more and returned to my seat. But Jason's relentless mocking didn't stop. No matter how much I tried to distance myself, he would approach me with more infuriating comments. "Do you not have any kids? Well, you got married late and to someone older, like a mother. Guess kids are out of the question." In this day and age, such remarks should be unthinkable to anyone with a sense of decency. Jason either lacks this sensibility or is deliberately trying to hurt me. Though I should ignore him, his words sting like a thorn in my heart. Both Linda and I love children. But as Jason mentioned, we are indeed older and mindful of the physical toll on Linda. We haven't explicitly discussed it, but we're both aware of these feelings deep down. That's why Jason's comments hurt me deeply and felt so demeaning. I could feel the pitying looks from nearby colleagues. Whether it's due to Jason's rude behavior or the realization of how deeply shocked I am, I can say, despite my passion for my job, I've been feeling increasingly out of place. The harassment from Jason continued, but I stayed at the company. While Jason often bothered me around work hours and breaks, once I'm engrossed in my tasks, I can immerse myself in my work. By that time, I was quite satisfied, and I suppose I had also acquired the skill to let anything unrelated to work that Jason might say just go in one ear and out the other. Lately, I've been less irritated by Jason. One day, Jason asked me about a company anniversary party happening over the weekend. About the upcoming company anniversary party, can your wife make it? Spouses and children were invited to the 10th anniversary celebration of our company's founding. While it's true that today's era makes it easier to establish startup companies, many still end up not surviving and eventually go bankrupt. In such an environment, it's impressive that this company has managed not only to survive for a decade, but also seems poised for steady growth in the future. I love my job and hope this life continues, but bringing Linda is another matter. Considering my past interactions with Jason, Linda would likely end up hurt. Moreover, Jason probably asked me if my wife was coming out of curiosity, wanting to see what she's like. He might not hesitate to make hurtful remarks even in Linda's presence. We're allowed to bring family, but I thought Linda might prefer a quiet evening at home. When I mentioned that, Jason looked surprised. Hey, don't dismiss it as nothing. I owe you one, so the least I can do is say hello. Clearly, Jason intended to involve Linda somehow. I was determined not to bring her, but Jason's next remark made me waver. What, are you embarrassed to show her to us? Pretending to love your wife in front of us but actually feeling inferior, right? Provoked by Jason, I found myself responding defensively. That's not true. All right, I'll talk to her about it. And so, I ended up discussing the company party with Linda. As soon as I get home, I immediately ask Linda, remember I mentioned the company's anniversary party this weekend? Turns out, families are welcome. I was thinking of going alone initially, but what do you think? Linda's face lit up upon hearing this. Really? I'd love to greet everyone at your workplace and see who you work with. Let's go together. Her genuine smile momentarily made me look forward to the party. However, Jason's smug grin soon invaded my thoughts. Hoping Linda wouldn't get hurt, I awaited the weekend with a mix of emotions. On the day of the party, I wore my usual suit, and Linda wore a dress she had chosen specifically for this occasion as we headed to the venue. Upon arriving at the hotel venue, we checked in. Linda was delighted by the floral arrangements and decorations. She was also looking forward to the meal, and I hoped for a peaceful time, but Jason shattered that hope. Hey Tom, there you are. Upon spotting me, Jason hurried over and said while glancing at the person next to me, Linda. Is this your parent next to you? Don't tell me you brought your mother. He had already seen Linda's photo, so such a mistake was impossible. Linda, unaware of Jason's malice, responded with a smile. No, I'm his wife, Linda. Thank you for always supporting him. I got a lot of sun exposure while working in Cambodia, which makes me look older than I am. When Linda said that, Jason agreed sarcastically. Indeed, you're right. Linda seemed unfazed by Jason's response, but it appeared to bother him. Finally, he made an outrageous comment. So, you're his wife. My apologies. I heard you were married recently, but at your age, having children must be challenging. Tom mentioned he likes kids, but I guess some things have to be sacrificed when you marry later in life. Even Linda couldn't hide her hurt, forcing a smile before looking down. I couldn't stand it anymore and looked at the seating chart to leave. We'll be finding our seats now. Thank you for having us today. Jason wouldn't let me leave the scene. And as always, he piled on the insults with his usual persistence. By the way, this party was only for spouses and children, wasn't it? I hope there's no misunderstanding. It was a roundabout way of suggesting that Linda and I looked like mother and son. I lost my temper and raised my voice at Jason. This person is my wife. How many times do I have to tell you? The room went silent, and I could feel everyone's eyes on us. Linda, embarrassed and her pride wounded, kept her head down. Jason, initially shocked by my outburst, seemed displeased at being yelled at by a subordinate. He spoke to me in a low voice. "Who do you think you're talking to? It seems you lack the common sense expected of a working adult. We can't have someone like you here. Please leave for today." Unable to contain my anger, I retorted to Jason with more force than intended. "I can't stand being in such a distasteful place any longer. Excuse us." Taking Linda's hand, I said, "Let's go," and headed for the exit. I was aware of the eyes of everyone in the venue on us. While walking amidst frustration and embarrassment, I heard the sound of hurried footsteps coming from behind. Turning around, I saw our company president, Mr. Thompson, pale-faced and running towards us. A man in his 60s was with him. Seeing Mr. Thompson's face, I stopped to say something before leaving the venue. But before I could speak, the man beside Mr. Thompson spoke up. "Linda, is that you, Linda?" Linda, who had been looking down, slowly lifted her face upon hearing her name. Surprised, she covered her mouth with her hand. "Could it be Alex?" The man standing next to Mr. Thompson, Alex Parker, seems to have come here with the president after hearing the commotion. It turned out he had been watching from a distance, and upon realizing the woman hanging her head was Linda, he hurried after her. "Linda, what exactly is your relationship with this person?" As Mr. Thompson was about to explain, "This person is..." Jason interrupted him. He began speaking with a condescending look, as if to educate someone unaware of the facts. "This is Mr. Parker, a major client of ours. Without him, our company would hardly survive. Mr. Parker, I deeply apologize for my subordinate's extreme rudeness." I hadn't realized the man was such an important figure. Instinctively, I straightened up, but I didn't understand how Alex was related to Linda. Looking at Linda, she uttered something shocking. "He is my brother. It's been a long time, Alex." Both Jason and I were taken aback by her words. It seemed that our company's president, Mr. Thompson, had heard from Alex beforehand that she resembles his sister, Linda. That's probably why, after overhearing part of our conversation, he chased after us as we were leaving, his face pale with urgency. But Jason's face was even paler than Mr. Thompson's. Of course, given the current times, it's unthinkable that he kept making those comments to the sister of a highly important client. However, Linda and I had never had a wedding or a family gathering, and I had never heard of her having a brother. Moreover, he seemed much older than Linda. When I looked at Linda for an explanation, she began to tell her story. I had met Linda's parents in person, but it turned out that her mother was actually her father's second wife. Linda's father had lost his first wife to illness, and by that time, he already had a son who was in elementary school. That son was Alex. Thus, Alex and Linda are half-siblings. Though there's an age gap between Linda and me, she's my dear sister. Hearing such harsh words about her pains me as well. When Alex glared at Jason, Jason noticeably shrank back. "Just some casual conversation, right, Tom? We talk like this all the time, don't we?" Jason looked at me for support, but there was no way I would affirm such behavior. Of course, Jason had deeply hurt Linda this time. Such actions are inexcusable. Indeed, Jason has made such remarks to me regularly. Each time, I felt uncomfortable but somehow endured it. If you ask other employees, they'll confirm that Jason's behavior is excessive. Come on, what's this all of a sudden? It's normal for guys to joke around like this. Jason tried to defend himself, but Alex cut him off. Do you not know the proper way to communicate? Can I trust a company where someone like you is in a managerial position? This concerns compliance as well. Hearing Alex's comments, Mr. Thompson sweated and apologized. Jason, even more flustered, kept trying to justify himself. I deeply apologize for any discomfort caused. Please rest assured, there's absolutely no issue with our company's culture. I have no interest in listening to someone who casually makes such remarks. Alex retorted sharply and turned to Mr. Thompson. Let me be clear, we've just witnessed an employee make problematic statements. How you handle this will determine whether I can continue to trust your company. It was evident that Alex was demanding strict action against Jason. Indeed, a company that overlooks such issues is bound to decline. Despite my own failing in not having filed a complaint with the appropriate authorities, I hoped that Mr. Thompson would impose a severe punishment. As Mr. Thompson hesitated, a cheerful voice said, "What's going on here?" A stylish woman approached Jason and stood beside him, arm in arm. Seeing the woman's face, I immediately recognized who she was. She is Jason's wife. Under normal circumstances, Jason might have boasted about her, but now was not the time. Instead, he seemed clearly annoyed by her presence. Could these be the people you were talking about? The May December couple, she began to say, looking at us with a mocking expression. At that moment, Jason shouted, "Just shut up and go over there." He likely mocked us at home too, using our situation as a joke over drinks. I could easily picture such scenes. After Jason's wife left, Mr. Thompson cleared his throat to gather attention. As Mr. Parker said, we need to clarify the facts and consider disciplinary action, including possible dismissal. Wiping the sweat from his forehead, Mr. Thompson said so. Hearing those words, Alex slowly nodded in agreement. If your company is serious about addressing misconduct, I can continue to trust it. This involves my family, so I'd appreciate a follow-up report. With that, Alex said, "I'll excuse myself for today," and headed for the exit. From his posture, it was clear he was somehow managing to contain his anger. Mr. Thompson rushed after him as Jason watched in dismay. Linda and I decided not to attend the party any longer and went to another hotel for dinner instead. Since we had dressed up and gone out, we decided not to just head home but to treat ourselves to a nice meal instead. Raising a toast, I spoke to Linda. "Sorry for making you feel bad today. Work is interesting, but that person really causes trouble." When I apologized, Linda shook her head apologetically. "I'm the one who should be sorry. I'm sure it's because of me that you often feel so downhearted." I had never seen Linda, who usually has an untroubled smile, blaming herself like this. What others say doesn't matter. I was drawn to your smile and your inner beauty. With that, Linda said, "Thank you," and finally showed me a smile. Then, I asked Linda something that had been on my mind for a while. "More importantly, you seemed quite close to Alex, but you've never mentioned him before. Could you tell me about the two of you?" "Sorry I haven't talked about it. It's not that I wanted to hide it." Linda then began to share her thoughts. By the time Linda was in elementary school, Alex was already in high school. When Linda found out that she and Alex were half-siblings, she couldn't shake the feeling that her mother favored her exclusively. Linda always felt guilty towards Alex and, admiring him, thought it was better to distance herself from him. That's why, from a young age, she was determined to work abroad. Since starting to work overseas, she has hardly returned to America, and she can't remember the last time she met Alex, which surprised me greatly. But Alex really seemed to care about you. Maybe you don't need to feel so burdened for his sake. Linda pondered for a moment, then sipped her drink, saying, maybe you're right. The following week after the party, the company set up a consultation service and a committee to investigate Jason's case. The committee's inquiries quickly brought Jason's past issues to light. Within a few months, Jason stopped coming to work without any notice, leading to either disciplinary dismissal or resignation. Though I felt somewhat guilty about his departure, I wasn't the only victim, and Jason had brought it upon himself. I hoped he would learn from this failure in his next job. After Jason left, I was able to work under a new supervisor without any stress. My relationship with Linda remained strong, filling both my professional and personal life with satisfaction. One day, as I went about my daily routine, Linda approached me with a proposal. We've had dinner with my parents, but how about having a meal with my brother, with Alex? I readily agreed to Linda's proposal. I have been curious about what became of their relationship since then, but I found myself unable to ask. Dining together likely meant Linda had come to terms with her feelings. I looked forward to the day when the three of us would dine together. Weeks later, the dinner took place. Thank you for today. My name is Tom, once again. Thank you as well. Let's skip the formalities today, Alex said with a smile, turning to Linda. I was surprised when you suddenly went abroad to work and we lost contact. Why do you always run away? Faced with Alex's question, Linda shared the feelings she had once confided in me. For Alex, it was like suddenly having a sister. She used to feel guilty, as if her mother's love was solely focused on her. Deciding to leave the house due to memories of Alex being in a bad mood. After listening intently to these stories, Alex finally smiled and said this. Maybe it was just teenage awkwardness. I might have been immature, but I was happy to have a sister. That hasn't changed. And our mother loved me as her own, despite not being her biological son. Linda seemed relieved by his words. Above all, we're the only siblings we have. Let's support each other from now on. And Tom, as a member of my extended family, I'm counting on you too. We clinked our glasses, reaffirming our bond and toasted once more.